point. We'll have questions from the audience. I have a few points I wanted to make and add. Think about the constitutional change allowing Chavez to run again and again. It's which our media called dictatorship. Keep in mind that in the U.S., that's the way it was here for the first 180 years of this country. A president could run as often as he wanted. Like, you've heard of a man named Roosevelt? And this was the law in the U.S. until the 1950s, when the 22nd Amendment changed the Constitution. So what we now call dictatorship in Venezuela was our own way of life for a long time. One other point about the press in Venezuela, the idea that Venezuela doesn't have a free press is really so absurd. They have what we don't have here. They have an opposition press. There was not a single daily newspaper in the United States that could be called an opposition press, which unequivocally opposed the war in Iraq, which unequivocally opposes invasion of Iran, which unequivocally opposed the bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999. You find there were 5,000 daily newspapers in the U.S. I challenge you to find a single daily newspaper that took those stands. And that's what you would expect with an opposition press. But we don't have that here. And you have that in Venezuela in full measure. Natalie mentioned this thing about terrorism. That's the most current example of the U.S. attempts to overthrow Chavez or to make life impossible for him. The threat to put him on this terrorist list. And this has to do with what happened in Colombia on March 1st. In Ecuador. Colombia invaded Ecuador March 1st, killing about 25 people with the clear help of the U.S. They could not have pulled that off without the U.S. technical help. Now, this word terrorism is used very loosely in this world today. It's become just another curse word or insult. If you oppose anyone's policies, you call them a terrorist. It doesn't have to be documented. That word is so commonly used. But in fact, the word terrorism has a clear historical meaning and usage. It's a very political definition, which is used by the FBI, by the United Nations, and is part of the U.S. Criminal Code. A terrorist terrorism is the deliberate use of violence against civilians to coerce a government or the population in furtherance of a political objective. Terrorism is a clearly political act. Without the politics involved, there's no terrorism. There's violence, of course, and crime, but terrorism is something special. And for that reason, I don't think that FARC, the Colombian guerrilla group, which was who were the objects of the attack in Ecuador on March 1st, we killed about 25 members of FARC. And then we found, the U.S. claims to have found computers there which speak of, in some way, getting money from the government of Venezuela and getting uranium from them. All that was missing was that a letter saying that Chavez had met with Osama bin Laden in Ecuador or something. And it was just, it's what you would expect. If you expect the U.S. to find computers which somehow survived a missile attack, which killed 25 people, somehow these computers survived with many thousands of documents, but FARC is, in my opinion, is not a terrorist group, because it's not political. It was 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, but FARC exists now as a criminal organization. It spends its time extorting money from businesses, running narcotics, kidnapping for ransom or kidnapping for other reasons we can't even figure out, rustling cattle, murdering campesinos for their failure to help them or other reasons. All these things are, in my mind, make FARC a criminal organization, not a terrorist organization. What are their politics? 20, 30 years ago, they could have been called Marxists. Well, they still are called Marxists by the US media, but it's really silly because they have no politics. And so you can't call them a terrorist group. So the idea of saying that Venezuela was aiding terrorism falls by that definition. The FARC has a lot to explain. They should not be confused with the Viet Cong or Cuban guerrillas led by Fidel and Che. But the U.S. government has the attitude under Bush that if you're not with us, you're against us. You've heard that. And if you're not with us, you must be terrorists. And so FARC is not with the U.S. government, so they're terrorists. Now, these documents which were found on the computer, which have been announced supposedly, before I left to come to this conference, I found on the internet the actual documents, well, the actual summary report by Interpol. Interpol was hired by the U.S. government or by the Colombia government to investigate examine these computer files. That thumping comes from the microphone, I think. Yeah. You hear?
It's okay.
Interpol was hired to investigate these files, and they announced that amongst the documents were the one which spoke of getting or being promised $300 million from Venezuela. And another one which spoke of uranium being sent to or promised to FARC by Venezuela. Supposedly uranium to make a, what do they call it, a dirty bomb. But before I left, I didn't have a chance to read the full report. These headlines about the money and the uranium apparently are not to be taken at face value. When I get back home, I want to read the entire Interpol report. You can find it on your computer easily enough. It seems as if once again the American media has chosen selectively from something to paint one of their designated enemies and to put him in a bad light. So I think these charges about the money and the uranium are still an open issue. But more important to me, in Colombia, you have a civil conflict going on for decades. The U.S. government has been siding with the government all that time, providing billions of dollars in weapons and in expertise. They said we have quite a few technicians. They're helping the Colombian government fight the opposition. Now, given that, how can the U.S. government say that Venezuela has no right to help the other side? We intervene totally on the side of the government. They are second or third in the world in the amount of military aid received from Washington, and yet we claim that only we have a right to take sides in this civil conflict. It's like with Iran in Iraq now. We claim that Iran is helping the Iraqis against the U.S. The U.S. has gone halfway around the world to intervene in Iraq, in this conflict there. And we say to Iran, you have no right living next door to help anyone in this conflict. The U.S. talks like it owns the world, and it does. They can make the most absurd statements, and the media will never question. These analogies I've made now with FARC and Iran, they're very obvious analogies, but you won't see that in the American media. So to keep that in mind. Okay, that's what I wanted to say right now. And if you have any questions for any of us, please feel free. Thank you.
I have a question of Natalie. I was out in Venezuela for a few weeks, a few years ago, in Caracas and Valencia, and just the military presence in the street and the weapons and stuff is kind of, I guess really the relationship between the military and the populace of Venezuela. The friends I was staying with, they said, like, don't even look at it, at the military. I mean, like they were, you know, and I just, you know, I would be curious about that. And the support for Chavez by, you know, his own military. I mean, is there, I think when the coup was in place, was it one of his generals or something that was broke away? And is that...
To answer your question, the relation that we have, the military relation that we have in Venezuela is very different than we have here in the U.S. Actually, especially now with President Chavez, you will see people from the army or the navy in Venezuela in the barrios building schools. You will see people from the army, the navy, or you name all these different branches of the military in different places in Venezuela doing things like that. Or even if we have a relief effort, they will be the ones handling that, which is something that you really don't see here. It's a different relationship. But the thing about your friend telling you not to look at the eye of the military guy, that's just something, you know, strange to the right sound like to me. Because I think I actually trust the military more than I trust the policeman, honestly. Just because the police force in Venezuela is very corrupt, still extremely corrupt. There's a lot of corruption in Venezuela. One of the things that I really hate the most, that really makes the process weak, is that the corruption. But like I said, I would trust a military person more than a police officer. The other thing is that when the coup happened, the military divided in the sense that some of the generals, the right-wing generals, were the ones who held the coup, along with other folks, of course. And the ones in command, they actually lied to the military that was, like, you know, in the bottom, you know, the officers, I don't know the names, or, you know, the little guys from the military. So they lied to them. And then when the rest of the military found out that President Chavez was actually kidnapped, then they revolted. And then they decided, you know, what we're doing is wrong. And then because of them, because of the military guys who actually wanted to do the best thing, or not the best thing, but the right thing, President Chavez was already was freed. But because of that, and also because of the Venezuelan people who, you know, left their streets, left their houses to go on the streets to talk about it. But you know, if you watch this movie, this film, it's not a movie, it's a documentary called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." I have some copies in the back. I don't know if there is anything else left. But it shows, it's made by two Irish filmmakers, totally independent. They were in Venezuela when the coup happened. And in this film, you can see this whole thing about the military and how they rescue the president, with, you know, along with all the Venezuelan population that wanted, you know, democracy in the country. You know, because if we elect somebody, we need to respect that, you know. And on the other side, in Venezuela, in the Constitution of Venezuela, we have something very unique that would be great if the U.S. has it. And it's a statute that says that the people of Venezuela has the right to recall the president during his or her, half of his or her time during the presidency. Just imagine if you had that right here. President Bush wouldn't be here. So just make sure that you grab a film. If you don't, I have one left in my bag, so I can give it to you, because you see it.
It was a beautiful country. I enjoyed my visit there.
Oh, good to know. I'm sure you, yeah. What? Is the teleférico Pico Bolivar now working? You know, I haven't been in Mérida in a while. I don't know if it's working. If it's working, Prout is not working right to the top. He's talking about the teleférico is the little car, the air car that goes, you know, from one stop to the next. And it's in Mérida we have the highest peak in the world. It's called Simón Bolívar Peak. And that's what he's referring to in the state of Mérida, which is one of the most beautiful states in Venezuela. that's not the same thing as the Enos Falls, which is the highest waterfall in the world, which is also in Venezuela. You had a question?
Yes. Is Telesur available online?
The what?
Telesur?
Yes, you can go to telesurtv.net. It's TELESURTV.net, and you can watch Telesur, which is the left wing CNN. Telesur, T-E. Oh, you can see it.
Yeah.
No. Oh, it's Telesur. Telesur TV.net.
Oh.
And then you can watch, reporting from across Latin America, and it's great. So, and also we have a campaign in the United States to ask DirecTV to add Telesur in the programming. So, they have different packages. They have the Spanish-speaking package, and they have CNN and blah, 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 all the right wings. So we're asking them to do Telesur. And I actually met with the vice president of DirecTV about 2 months ago, and he sounded like he wanted to do it. So we'll see if he doesn't have any position. Yes?
Following the revolution and under the new constitution, what's the status of women's rights in Venezuela with respect to property, employment, education, and reproductive freedom?
Great, you asked a question. In the back, I have a fact sheet on the role of women in Venezuela. So make sure that you read that one. But I have to say that women rule Venezuela. I mean, we have President Chavez, who's a male, but within all the different ministries that we have, ministries are the departments, like the State Department, the Department of Education, all those departments. Women, the majority of the heads of those departments, or ministries as we call it, are headed by women. We also in Venezuela have something called the Women's Bank, a bank just for women. The bank actually, what it does is that it creates cooperatives, like it's money for women to create their own business, and it's specifically targeting women. The other thing you gotta recognize, at least in Venezuela, the women are the ones who actually are the most active, are the ones who are organizing within their communities way more than men. I mean, if you go to Venezuela, if you've never been, when you go there, go to any barrios a low-income neighborhood, and just ask them when they have their community meetings, the council meetings. And if you go, I guarantee you that most people there will be women. The other thing is that with the new constitution, women who had to be home taking care of the kids, I mean, that's a job. If my husband is working and we had 3 children, and if, and I can't go to work because I have my children, because, whatever reason, that's work. So women in Venezuela who are housewives, they get minimum wage. Everybody. So that's actually to reach equality. Something like we have delegations from NOW, the National Organization for Women, and other women groups that go a lot to Venezuela, and they're going pretty soon again, and they're being amazed about that. So it's actually a very important topic that you can read more in the fact sheet. You and then you. Okay.
I've read that President Chavez met with Castro, and Castro said to him, "Don't do as I did," which I suppose he meant by that, don't have a top-down revolution, but make sure that it's bottom-up. And the conditions that Cuba was facing, obviously, are very different from those that Chavez is facing. There's a lot more opportunity, probably which is tied up in Iraq, and also because of the oil wealth of Venezuela in particular. But still, it does seem as though a lot of the revolution revolves around President Chavez, at least in terms of what we've seen. And I want to know to what extent the character of the revolution is bottom-up. We saw that the people turned out in the streets when there was the attempted coup. And that was, a big response. Shows very strong public support. But to what extent are there committees, these Bolivarian circles, to what extent are they involved in actually running the economy? Has democracy progressed to that level in Venezuela yet, where there actually participation in
Got it. Good. Great question. 2 things. one thing, I think if anybody here has been in either Venezuela or Cuba, or at least read about both countries, they know that we're very different. I mean, what's happening in Venezuela is not what's happening in Cuba. I mean, it's just two different worlds. And yes, President Chavez has a great relationship with Cuba, and we owe a lot to Cuba. For example, doctors. We have 20,000 Cuban doctors in Venezuela. And they're the ones who are in the low-income neighborhoods helping Venezuelan people. Why do we have so many doctors in Venezuela from Cuba, you may ask? The reason is that when we started implementing these different missions, again, which are the programs, the social programs in Venezuela, the president and everybody, asked, the Venezuelan doctors, hey, we need doctors to go to the low-income communities and start taking care of low-income people. Nobody wanted to do it. Not even a single Venezuelan wanted to do it. So we had to get Cuban doctors. Plus, they're, one of the best ones in the world. Very Cuban doctors. I mean, my uncle is a doctor and he studied in Cuba. So hey, and he was the president of the Latin American Medical Association. So anyway, yeah, big guy. So that was one thing. But it is in Venezuela. What we have in Venezuela is a participatory democracy, which is very different from what you have here. In Venezuela, we believe that things have to come from the bottom to the top, and it's not rhetoric, it's not theory, it's actually seen in practice. It's not perfect. Like I said before, Venezuela has still a lot of room for improvement, but the results that have a core because of that mentality of having people being organized and taking care of their communities has been tremendous. For example, one of the best cities, if you've never been in Venezuela or you've been to, you must go to the city of Carora. The city of Carora is, I think, is the best place to go to witness this. So what they do, not just in Carora, but across the country, is that the community gets together and they see and they analyze what the problems are. For example, there was one city in Venezuela where the mayor came in and they have this budget, right? And the mayor hired all these engineers to tell the mayor and the city what to do with the money. So what are the crucial issues happening in the city that needed to be fixed? So the engineers came in and they had this big plan and they said, we need more lights in that market and more things. They projected all this. So after that, this is actually a true story. After that, they had a community meeting with everybody, like a town hall meeting. So the engineers get a presentation to the community, and they basically told the community what the problems were and how the money was going to be used. These engineers did not live in that town. They were from Caracas, from outside the city. So what happened? The community stood up and said, but those are not our problems. Yes, we need more lights, but that's not a crucial problem here. Our crucial problem is that when it rains, all the main streets of this town get all over flooded. It's water everywhere because there are not enough drainage to get rid of the water. That's the problem. But since the engineers came during the sunny days, when everything was perfect, they never solved that issue. So the mayor was like, you know what, they're right, that's what we're going to do. So they used the money for the budget to do that, to fix the drainage for the water. So that's one example of how participatory democracy in power takes place. Having people being organized and discussing what's best for the community. And that's how you actually teach people that they have the power to impact their lives through the government. In the sense that if the government is offering you a budget, you have the right to say how the money is going to be used. So, and actually this is being implemented throughout the nation. And one of the reforms that we had in 2007 that failed, because we lost the referendum, was to give more power to local communities so they could do more. More power meaning that we still have a lot of bureaucracy in the sense that, we have the mayor, we have the governor, we have, all these different officials, but sometimes because of corruption, which is one of the biggest problems that we have in Venezuela, the money doesn't go to where it's supposed to be going. So if you open up and you make the system more transparent, and you give power to the local communities to see the budget and to see where the money is going to, then the corruption is not gonna be eliminated. I mean, forget it. I mean, that's just ridiculous to say that there's not gonna be corruption ever again. But at least you're gonna decrease it, you know? But it is being implemented. It could be better, and we try to make it better. But I hope we had another. I don't know when we're gonna have another constitutional reform. Probably like in the next 5 years or so. If not, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. Especially because we have elections in November. Regional elections are happening in Venezuela. So if you wanna go to Venezuela, it's a great time to go. November, so you can see elections happening. So yeah, that's a quick answer for that.
That's the city of what?
I think that was Carora, actually. It's C-A-R-O, Carora, R-A, Carora.
C-O-R-O-R-A.
Carora, C-A-R-O-R-A. That's the state of Participatory. No, Carora, Valencia, yeah. But I can give you my card. But it's just one of many cities. I mean, it's not the only city that you can see things like that. Even within Caracas, in the different neighborhoods that we have, you see being implemented all the time. Music is a big thing in Venezuela. I don't know if you heard of this guy called Dudamel, that orchestra guy. Have you seen that? Yeah. He was in 60 Minutes? Yeah. So we have a program in Venezuela of music. We take low-income kids, especially kids who are on the street, you know, who live on the street, homeless. We take them to these programs and we teach them to play an instrument, any instrument that they want to play. And that's how we recruit them that way. And that's how we bring them into the system, to get an education and do that. Because if you can get a kid and put him in a shelter or whatever, but if you're not doing it in the right way, he's going to hate it and he's going to leave, or she's going to leave. So you got to actually persuade them, seduce them. And then, so the music is another good way where it has been implementing in local communities to bring more music so kids have something to do and don't do vandalism or, you know, do bad things. You had a question.
Yeah, two questions. One, I'd just like a second or validate your observation about women. I was in Venezuela for a very short period of time in 2006, just before the election. We gave a talk, and I had one day to go around and visit some of the Bolivarian circles and some of the community centers and so on. And it occurred to me after I finished my tour that every single activist I met was in female. And I asked my friend, I said, is this common? And he said, yes. She said, not everyone. She said, there's some guys, but that's overwhelming. Women are running these things. And my question is sort of then, where are the guys? You know, what is going on?
Drinking beer? No, sorry.
Well, there's also the other part of it is Caracas is the most dangerous city in Latin America. Like, don't go out, you know, at night. Or, I mean, are the women the political activists and the guys are all, you know, criminals? I mean,
No.
Is there a gender issue there? Why? I mean,
No.
clearly the women are really involved. It's amazing. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. I say that I'm not a socialist in the U.S., and I say I'm definitely not a feminist in the U.S. perspective. I don't know. It's a different thing. I think it's a culture. I don't even know what it is. But people in Venezuela, especially women, we're powerful. We really speak up. Especially in Latin America, we're so different. We have different cultures within our nations. And like if you meet, if I see you, I can tell you where you're from, just because of the voice and how you speak and how you look. But if you compare Venezuela especially with people from Central America, Central Americans, especially women, are more soft. In Venezuela, we're more loud. Especially it has to do with the Caribbean region also. I don't know if it's the sun, I don't know what it is, but we're not. But it's really interesting. I really hope somebody makes a study out of this, because I'm not even playing. It's just I'm totally honest. And but the guys do participate. But I think women, by nature, we're more out there. We also, I think, it's the sense that we have children. Not to say that guys don't have children, but we actually, we're the ones who, produce them, and kind of. And I think we're more passionate and inclined to see things in a better way. Like, for example, women were the ones who were pushing for healthcare for all, for having doctors within the communities. Guys didn't think about it. Oh, it wasn't just a priority. For them, it was more of an economic issue or, you know, different things. But women were the ones who headed the whole thing about healthcare. The education issue was headed not by women, but the Afro-Venezuelans. And I tell you what, the Afro-Venezuelan community is very big. It's at least 20%. But, you know, that's like the census that I think should be corrected, because we're so mixed that I think everybody's Afro. But unless you're really, really white and you just came from Europe, you know. But what I'm going to say is, like, for example, the Afro-Venezuelans understood that if we wanted to eliminate or decrease discrimination, you needed to start in the education department, the education ministry, in the books. Because when you have children who are like, you know, who are in kindergarten or first, second grade, third grade, they teach you, you know, Christopher Columbus came to the Americas in el año 1492. The year 1492, right? I can't do numbers in English. I've never been able to do so. So they teach, you know, but they also teach you, you know, they brought the Africans, all the slaves. But that's what they teach you. They don't teach you the contributions. They don't teach you the good things. You know, they don't teach you that, you know, I'm indigenous, I'm European, I'm Arab, and I'm black. I have 4, you know, ethnicities within me, you know. So you gotta start in education, you know, curriculum. You know, that's something that I would love to see in the United States happening. You know what I mean? Because we don't have it. Here, you guys, I'm sorry, you still celebrate Columbus Day. Give me a break. It's not Columbus Day. In Venezuela, that's another thing that we fixed. We celebrate the Day of Indigenous Resistance. You know, we were here. I mean, the indigenous were here. You didn't discover us. We were here. You just noticed that we were here. And then you kill us. So it's Indigenous Resistance Day. That's what we need to celebrate. We don't need to celebrate Columbus Day. And I think it's really outrageous that we're in the year 2008 and you still celebrate that. I mean, do something. Be active and change that. You know what I mean? You're in a conference with a whole bunch of lefties. I'm serious. And it's a point that, I mean, we were able to, and this was the indigenous community in Venezuela were the ones who pushed for that, to change the name and the significance, not just the name. Another question?
Yeah, my other question, just the other day I watched a video, 5 Factories, about the cooperative movement, you know, in Venezuela. And I was wondering if you had more information about that. I mean, I know it's part of this vision of 21st century socialism, the idea of worker-run enterprises is part of that project. I know a lot of them are being set up. Are they working? Are they failing? Or how's that all playing out? Very exciting.
A couple of things I'll say. I'm actually putting a plug in for a workshop that is from 4 to 6 later on today. This is a DVD that was made by a friend of mine. In Venezuela, you have what's called the Prout Research Institute in Caracas that's being set up by a friend of mine. One of the key aspects of Prout is cooperative development, cooperative businesses, both for producers and for consumers. So my friend who has lived in Caracas for approximately the last 6 or 7 years, he put together a group that went out to cooperatives and did a survey. And this DVD is the result of them filming and interviewing many members of the cooperative movement in Venezuela. There are approximately about 50,000 cooperatives now, because that's a key component of how the Chavez government sees that they can control their own economy and not have businesses that are successful in Venezuela then move to a low-wage country. Local control and local supervision of the cooperatives is a key component of the Bolivarian Revolution, 21st century socialism. So in the workshop that will come after this, I'll be showing this DVD, and also be mentioning my friend's book, After Capitalism. I have some copies here. He wrote in, let's see, I think it was 2003, 2004, it was updated. and it has a significant component of the Proudest movement in Venezuela in a couple of chapters. So, if you'd like to...
Come to your workshop, because I'm giving one next...
Right, well...
But I want that video, if you like buy it.
Yeah, the video is available. I got several of them, as are the books too.
And I'll also be talking about that book in another workshop.
Oh, very good. Very good.
That's very...
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, okay.
I have one.
Go ahead.
For Natalie. You know, you're Venezuelan, but went to college here, and sounds like you're still in your 20s. Given your perspective, how do you look at U.S. youth, and what would be your idea about galvanizing them into awareness, where your country is, what it's about, some straight facts?
I think and I'm going to say this, but I'm not saying that I don't support, because I can't support any political person in the U.S., but I think that the Obama movement with the youth can give you a lot of answers in the way that I think youth, not just in Venezuela, but I've seen it here in the U.S. too. I think the human means not just youth, but the humans as people. We move through inspiration. And, you know, we have, you know, especially young people, we're very idealist. And so that helps. And if you, like for example, the Hip Hop Caucus in the U.S., it's a group, I don't know if you heard of it, the Hip Hop movement. You know, the music, hip hop, they're actually being very successful in teaching people, young folks, especially people of color. That's mostly their membership. I mean, anybody can jump in, but I'm just saying that most people that are seen in the movement, they're either blacks or Latinos. They using music, they actually mobilizing and bring them in, and then they're able to speak on issues that relate to their lives, like poverty, like economics, like empowerment, like education. Like if you wanna be empowered, you gotta have education. That's just, there's no other way, you know, and being able to see beyond, you know, what you've been taught. So that's one way. For example, a month ago we had a conference at Howard University, which is a historic African American university in the U.S. in Washington D.C. And we brought, I was actually in charge of that, a hip hop group from Venezuela to the U.S. They're black Afro-Venezuelans here. So I was able to spread the word through Facebook and all these different places. With, you know, I would go to bars, you know, where young people into different classrooms, and I would give out flyers and say, you know, Venezuelan hip hop group, come over. So once I get them in the room, I lock the door, and then we start talking about politics, and then with the musicians, and their lyrics, the things that they were singing was all about social justice. It wasn't the regular bling bling that you hear in Hollywood and all the things. It was young people, you know, playing hip-hop about social justice, and that's how you get it. Because you see, we're in a different generation, and I see that the left is still using, like especially, you know, older folks, is still using the same, I don't want to, you know, I'm very careful here, they're still using the same practices or the same ways to attract people as they did in the 60s. It's a different era. You know, I have a Facebook account, I have like 500 people in my Facebook account. And that's how and these are people who tell their old folks, you know, what's happening. And that's how we distribute information through online too, and watching different TV shows. And so you gotta be very creative. And the best way that I can tell you is, you know, in your neighborhood or in your organization, if you don't have a youth group in your organization, whatever you have, it doesn't matter what your organization is about, just make sure that you have a youth group linked with a university or high school. That way, you know, you have the youth walking in, they can create their own agenda based on the goals of your organization, and you see how it goes. And you see how next year, if you have this and everybody does it, you're going to have young people in their 20s like me sitting right there or speaking up here, because I think more people should be speaking up here, not just, you know what I mean? It's great to hear your experience, because I'm very honored of having you here, you too. Very, very honored. But I wish more young people would be here, because it inspires. You know, it inspired me when I was in college, seeing young people speaking out, because I said, hey, you know, she's only like 3 years older than me. She does it, I can do it too. Then I'll be mobilizing and bringing more folks into my group. That's the way it works. Yes?
I understand that, you know, Chavez has called for an international 9/11 investigation. Is that correct?
No, that's not right. No, we're not.
He has spoken about it.
People have been pushing to have him. Even we have some people from the 9/11 group who are, I think, the same people who are here in this conference or related, going to Venezuela, really pushing, but we're not touching that. I mean, that's just something that, you know, people, even immigration, I get so many people calling me to ask President Chavez to speak about legalization for undocumented people. You know, people need to understand that I need to start a movement here too, you know. And a lot of people tell me, Natalie, I want to move to Venezuela. You know, I want to help you guys in. I'm like, you know, you want to help me? Help me by staying here in the U.S. I would love to go back to my family in Venezuela. All my family is in Venezuela, my brothers, you name it. But I gotta be here. And the reason why I gotta be here is the same reason why you have to be here. To communicate with the folks and to actually empower people to be leaders who actually are thinkers. I think last question.
Yeah, last question.
Because it's 3:45.
You spoke about the 20,000 Cuban doctors. I'm going to ask a hard question. Hugo Chavez has been in power for 10 years now. What's being done to change the structure so that the Venezuelan country itself commits the resources to have the medical schools and the structure and so on to deal with their own health things without depending upon Cuba for that particular aspect?
Great question. Yesterday, guess what happened? And it happened also last year for the first time. This is the second time. We graduated 500 students, Venezuelan students in the medical field. And now what we're teaching in Venezuela, which didn't happen before, is teaching medicine, but also in preventive medicine. And also community-based medicine, which is not the same thing that you're going to apply in a hospital. You know, it's for communities. So we're doing that. So we now have 1,000 medical students. It's going to take a while. But the more students we have, the less students we're going to have. But let me tell you something else. Because every time I go to Venezuela, I got to, you know, go through all the missions. The amazing thing is that now the Cubans have been in Venezuela since 2003. What happens when you have young people, young professionals, going to another country for a long time? They fall in love. So when they fall in love, what happens? They have babies. So now you see all these Cubans who are now in Venezuela and they're not trying to leave because they either met a Venezuelan women and they're married, or perhaps the guys want to go back to Cuba and now he or she is taking the Venezuelan person. So it's actually amazing. Nobody has ever written about it. I think they're waiting for a couple more years. But I've seen babies now who are Venezuelan Cubans, you know, from doctors. So it's not like they're having a horrible time. So I had to say that.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to